Um, I saw a light in the distance, and I knew it was really important, but I didn't understand what it was. There was something that I instinctively knew that it was really important, but I didn't know why, or I didn't know what it was. So I didn't pay too much attention to it after that, and I just kind of went back to floating around um, aimlessly next to my body.
Hi, Soul Family, and welcome to my channel. I'm your host, Haji, and this is Amazing NDE Download Stories. Our guest today is Aaron Green, the one and only.
I
Aaron, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so Aaron, I'm going to go on mute and just dive right in and tell us about your amazing NDE experience.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. First, I'll give just a little summary of me and my life. My name's Aaron Thomas Green. I'm 48 years old. I was born in Durham, North Carolina, and when I was two, my parents moved to Chesapeake, Virginia. So I grew up there. Um, I had an experience shortly before my sixth birthday, and after my experience, I grew up. I lived in a suburban house. My parents took me to Catholic church growing up. And then I went to college, got a degree in electrical engineering, and I work at a company called Newport News Shipbuilding. They make all the country's aircraft carriers and half of the submarines for the United States Navy. I'm married with three kids and a dog, and I live a fairly what I think of as a fairly normal suburban life. Um, but going back to this experience I had shortly before my sixth birthday, I had been with some friends in a neighbor's backyard, and we had just been playing, doing the stuff kids do. Everything was pretty normal. Everybody was happy or having a good time. And then I'm not sure what happened, but somehow I started to develop a breathing difficulty. And no matter what I did, I couldn't take a breath. I couldn't breathe, and it was getting worse and worse, and I was becoming more and more upset and frustrated. And I started to walk away to try to go back home to see if I could get some help. And I still couldn't breathe. I just could not take a breath no matter what I did. And something about this breathing problem, it triggered some sort of deeper response for me. I didn't pass out or faint, but my soul or my consciousness, whatever it is that I really am, my core being, it left my body, and I watched as my body fell to the ground. I could see it from the outside. Um, and so I'll just briefly cover it, and then I'll go back and go into some more details. Um, I existed in this plane of existence that I consider to be kind of like parallel to our physical realm. It was some kind of spiritual realm. And very quickly, I had a life review, my entire life replayed from the beginning all the way up to that last um, that last breathing problem. And what was interesting about that is that I could not only did I re-experience all the stuff that I had gone through, all the feelings that I had had, but I also felt and I experienced the emotions and the thoughts that those around me had, and I could literally feel how I had made people feel. And as a little, I saw a light in the distance, and I knew it was really important, but I didn't understand what it was. There was something that I instinctively knew that it was really important, but I didn't know why, or I didn't know what it was. So I didn't pay too much attention to it after that, and I just kind of went back to floating around aimlessly next to my body in my neighbor's backyard. And as I floated there, I would have questions about, what was going on, who I was, where I came from. And as these questions would come to me, the answers would like I would have answers come to me. I'm not sure how that worked, but a lot of these answers were me re-experiencing something that I had previously experienced. Like I saw events that I had previously been part of, and the questions that I had were answered in extreme detail. And there's a lot there that I'd like to go into a little further. Um, but after maybe 30 seconds of Earth time, and again, time in that spiritual realm, it wasn't the same as time in our physical realm. It's not like a one-to-one correlation. Somehow it was very different. But anyway, after maybe 30 seconds of earth time, this being of light, an angel, another soul, a person, like I'm not sure what it was, but this being of light came to me very quickly and told me that I was not to leave my body. It was kind of like I had done something I wasn't supposed to do. That the impression that I got was that the breathing problem I had shouldn't have been enough to trigger my soul to leave my body, but it did. And so anyway, I immediately was back in my body, and I stood up. I didn't have a breathing problem anymore. I went home, tried to talk to my mom and explain to her what had happened. But at that age, and I had a pretty bad speech impediment back then. Um, I couldn't explain it. I just there's no way that I was going to be able to explain this to her. Um, so I thought about this experience for you know daily for months, and after maybe 6 months went by, I was contacted by one of the guides that I had worked with previously, like a spiritual guide. Um, a soul that existed on the spiritual realm contacted me and essentially said that they needed my permission because they needed to hide that memory of this experience. They basically told me it was interfering with my life and it was causing me troubles, and that it prevented me from developing faith because like I had seen all this stuff, so I knew too much to ever develop faith, because there's something about being ignorant and not knowing that allows us to develop faith, which kind of like it's like it's more powerful on a different level, because we don't here in this physical existence we don't know, so we need to develop some faith. And anyway, I agreed, and they hid that memory from me. And then I went through life, went to college, got married, had kids, and about 10 years ago, um, I got these. I got the memories back. I had been reading a Newsweek article about Eben Alexander, who is a neurosurgeon who had a near-death experience. And when I was reading his experience, I accepted what he was saying, and um, somehow that triggered the recall of this experience that I hadn't thought about in like 30 years. And I remembered everything, and I've been thinking about this experience for the last 10 years now, trying to come to terms with what I saw as a kid, trying to understand it. And, as an adult, with an adult understanding of the world, I can put it in context and understand what I had experienced, but I couldn't put together those same things as a 6-year-old. I didn't understand a lot of this on the same level. So anyway, I'd like to go back and talk about some of that in a little more detail. The first thing is that life review I mentioned. To me, that was very significant, having my life replay and for me, in that what was really important. The takeaway that I have from that is that how I had the things I had done that affected other people. Like, I got to feel that for myself. I could literally feel my mom's love, my dad's anger and frustration at changing diapers and having a screaming child. He loved me and everything, but if you have kids, you understand it's frustrating, and I could feel that frustration. I could literally feel it, and it makes me think of people that live their life and they hurt other people. They're gonna feel that hurt for themselves. That's their hurt, and they're gonna feel it. But then likewise, people that help others, or do something kind for another person, they're going to feel that the effect they've had on that other person. If you've helped somebody, you get to re-experience how that helpfulness has made this other person feel. And it seems like that's going to be a wonderful thing for all the good, kind things and helpful things that we've done for other people. And it's going to be not so pleasant for the times that we've hurt others, or done something that made someone upset. Anyway, I think I was only 6 years old, and so my life review was pretty short. but I think there's plenty of other people who have described that same kind of life review, that could probably explain it better than I could. Another thing I wanted to talk about was God. During my experience, I got to see how we all started out. I had started out as a soul, independent of this physical body, way before this Aaron Green body was ever conceived. And it was me and hundreds or thousands of other souls. We were all together in it was kind of like a sea of light. Um, we were all happy and content, but we were completely ignorant. We didn't know anything. We hadn't had any experience. We didn't understand anything about anything. And um, at one point, God lifted me up out of this group of souls, and basically said that I was ready to begin a journey. Um, and I wanted to say that this interaction with God, it left me with the feeling that God was just absolutely wonderful, kind, compassionate, honest, caring, deeply respectful of me as an independent, me as a being, as a soul. And that you know every characteristic that I could feel from God, it was all positive. Just absolutely wonderful. There was not a shred of negativity or hate or judgment or meanness or any of that kind of thing. And that it and we were created by God, um, and to understand our creation and this life and how it all works. One of our key attributes that people need to understand is our free will. And God explained this to me. Basically, He said we were created with free will, that we were not intended to be mindless, uh, you know, mindless lackeys of God. We were created so that we could make our own decisions, that we could do what we wanted to do, and that was like critical. That was critically important, and that free will, it comes into play in all aspects of this physical life, and how everything works. Like, free will is really important, and God basically explained it to me. And in order for us to appreciate and enjoy all the stuff that God has in store for us, we need to freely choose to conduct ourselves with the same type of traits that God has. Loving, kindness, compassion, honesty, all those positive, good traits that God has. In order for us to enjoy our existence, we need to freely embrace those same traits. And as a soul living or existing in this happy sea of light, there was no reason for us to change and grow. Like, we would have just kind of been stuck there forever. And God created this entire physical reality as kind of like a school, or a kindergarten, a boot camp, whatever you want to call it. But it allows us to get the experiences that we need so that we can grow in the way that God wants us to grow, which is to be more loving, kind, compassionate, etc. And this entire physical reality and our existences, our life, like, it was all planned in extreme detail, like down to the smallest, the smallest part of it was all planned by God. And God was absolutely confident that this was a good plan. This was a good idea, that this was worthwhile, and that it was going to be, it was worth it. But, like, God fully knew that this was going to be difficult for us. But the rationale I was given was essentially, we could get all of the bad parts of our existence out of the way very quickly, and then we can enjoy our existence, our wonderful existence that God has prepared for us. I asked God, well, can't you just change me and make me however I need to be so I can enjoy this existence? Like, why do I have to go through this hard this hard physical journey? And the answer was, absolutely, God is capable of changing all of us, but that it would violate our free will. And in order for us to have free will, which God respected immensely, that our ability to make our own decisions, God respected that completely. And in order for it to all work, we needed to be created simple, and then we would need to grow into the kind of entity or kind of being that we were supposed to be. You know, loving, compassionate, honest, kind, all that stuff. And it made sense the way uh, God described it. And you know, this physical realm, I think it's interesting that it was created, and all this was kind of like shown to me. This physical reality that we exist in, it was created kind of like a ugly reflection of the spiritual realm. You know, like all these little details, so many little details, they all have a significance or a correlation in the spiritual realm. And just a couple examples I'll throw out, like every soul has a vibration to it, and the highest vibrations are, love, compassion, honesty, kindness, that kind of stuff, and the lower vibrations are like hatred, animosity, jealousy, that kind of stuff. And each soul has a vibration to it, but we as people, we have a heartbeat all the time, right? And it's like that vibration that we have in us, that serves as a reminder of this spiritual realm where we all have our vibration also. And like the earth couldn't exist without the sun, or life on it. And I take it that the sun is like a perfect correlation of God, incredibly hot, and incredible amount of light. And I think there's like a correlation, like heat correlates to I think uh, wisdom, and light correlates to love or something like that. But like all these physical attributes in our reality, it all has a reflection of some deeper meaning in the spiritual realm. And I think this entire physical reality we're in, it's just like God has kind of like created it. And as I see it, every part of this physical reality is actually really God in one form or another. I think if you look at like um, atoms, how atoms work with the nucleus and the protons and neutrons and the electrons going around. Like to me, it's just like a little piece of God that's kind of like trapped in this form in order to serve this bigger purpose. But anyway, I'm kind of going off on a tangent there. This whole physical realm, it was created deliberately and with purpose, because it will allow us as souls to grow and to get to where we need to be. And you know so that's one thing that I saw about God. So the two key takeaways for me for that was, one is that we were created simple and we have free will, and free will is really important, and you need to understand that if you want to understand how this bigger reality works, what's going on here. And the other is that God is absolutely wonderful, just terrific. None of this like God hates people, or God is angry with somebody. It doesn't really work that way. That's just not quite how it works. God loves us and cares about us deeply. But anyway, I was able to see, what led me into this life and how that worked. When God, when I left God to start this physical journey, I was shown an immense number of different planets that I could have gone to. How people think that this universe is only Earth and that's all God cares about. I don't understand that at all. Okay, there's so much more going on than just this planet. Like, not it seems like it was a finite amount, like not infinite, but just absolutely huge. And anyway, I saw this, and other in near death experiencers have seen the same thing, where there's lots of other planets with souls incarnated in a physical being just like us, living on it. But I saw all these different planets that I could go to, and it was up to me to choose which one to go to. And there's something about Earth where I was absolutely positive this is where I want to go. This is where I want to have this experience. And so, I came to Earth. And I've been a little hesitant to talk about this in some of the other videos, but I think probably I just should. Um, this isn't my first physical life. Okay. I think most near-death experiencers, or not most, but certainly a large number have seen this for themselves. Um, you know, I saw, I was shown bits and pieces of many previous lives. Um, how people have come to this conclusion that a eternal spiritual being could only have one brief physical incarnation. I don't understand how that mindset has come to pervade the religious circles in our part of the world. They don't have that same thought in other parts of the world, but somehow people are so trapped by religious tradition and religious dogma that they have trouble breaking away from this centuries old misconception that we are eternal physical beings with only one little brief short life. But what I was shown very clearly, as I would call it, it was made painfully obvious to me that I've been here before. This is not my first existence. I saw brief brief sections of many different lives, like little snippets here and there, but it was enough to know that you know that Aaron Green is not it's not my only lifetime. There was one I felt kind of compelled to share with you, just to give you a flavor for the kind of things I saw. Um, I had been living, I think this was 500 or 1,000 years ago, living somewhere in Europe, in kind of like, a small kingdom. There was like a king, and we were kind of all peasants, and we were going to go to war with some other kingdom. And these are just long forgotten kingdoms that who knows what they are now. But I was like really gung ho to go to war. I was trying to hype everybody up and say, hey, we're gonna kill these guys. They're the bad guys, and you know, and it's gonna be awesome. We're gonna win this battle, right? And we all rush into battle, and I was the first person killed. Okay, and that's just one of these brief snippets that I saw of previous lives. And um, so anyway, for planning this life, this Aaron Green life, it's not like I was just forced into this. I was working with what I would describe as spiritual guides. These were souls that had previously lived on Earth, but they're done with Earth, and they were there to help me plan out this life. And um, these guides, they were giving me as much freedom as possible to plan this life, but they would kind of show me one thing or another. And so, um, because of these previous lives that I had lived, which was quite a few, I was in a position where I had a little more freedom to pick what kind of person I wanted to be than I think a newer soul could choose. A soul that has worked to help build this world, get things to where they are, has more freedom to pick what kind of country they want to live in, what kind of family they're going to be born into, than a newer soul, or a soul that has made some really poor choices and mistreated other people. They're not going to have the same abilities. But I had done sufficient work previously to help humanity progress to the level that we're at now, that I was able to choose a life in America, which I saw pretty clearly. This is a country that souls want to come to. That this life's a little easier here than a lot of other places, and not everyone is able to make that choice. Um, and I also saw that some souls that are here in America right now, they're not necessarily coming back to America. I look at, I don't really mean to call anybody out or anything, but I look at those who look down on other people in other parts of the world, and I'm like, you might be there your next life. Don't be so certain that you're coming back to America, because I saw very clearly that lots of people who are in America are not necessarily coming back here. But anyway, I was able to choose America. I guess I had previously been a good enough parent that I was able to choose, kind, compassionate parents who loved me. Um, and my soul guides walked me through this, and we found parents that I liked. I liked the kind of parents they would be. I was able to see what kind of people they would be, what kind of people they are, what kind of parents they would be. what their spiritual journey had been like, and where they were on their spiritual journey. Like it's kind of amazing some of the stuff I know about their spiritual journey that they don't even know themselves. I and the same thing with my brother. I have an older brother, and I knew that I would be born into a family if I made this choice, that I would have this older brother. And you know, I knew all about this family. I knew everything there was to know about what I was being born into, what I was getting myself into. And my guides even warned me. They said, "Hey, if you choose this family, your father has kind of a temper, and that's going to be kind of an issue growing up." And there was stuff I liked about my father, um, and I accepted that that he would have these anger issues, and I would have to deal with that growing up. But it was still where I wanted to be. And then choosing this body, they didn't force me to pick to pick this. It was all my choice. Initially, I wanted to be a redheaded girl. Like there's something about that really appealed to me. I like the idea of having the red hair. It was kind of rare, and I like the idea of being a girl, because I don't know for sure, but I think I had maybe been violent in a previous life, and I was concerned that I might be a violent person, and I knew that girls were less violent. Um, but the other aspects of the life didn't quite work out. It didn't all fit together. And so I opted for the brown haired boy because these parents had so many, the genetics for the brown headed boy, that was like, they were overwhelming. And so it allowed me to make all kinds of other choices about intelligence, looks, personality, all that stuff. It all fit together a lot nicer for me. So initially, I wanted to be like the best looking guy on the planet. And these parents, they had that available to them. And I mean, the kind of guy you see on the cover of magazines, just really, really good looking. And I could pick that. That was easily available from these parents. But my guide said, basically, they said, "Hey, wait a minute. If you choose this, you're going to be promiscuous. You're going to, women are going to treat you differently." Um, and where you are in your spiritual development, you don't have the right kind of self control. You're gonna fall to that temptation, and that was my choice. But I also saw that there's a spiritual downside of being too promiscuous. Um, there's a I guess there's like a higher spiritual benefit to being more monogamous. Okay, and if I had been very promiscuous, there's a negative spiritual consequence to that. That I didn't like. It didn't work out for me. I said, no, that's not right. So I backed the attractiveness down to attractive, but nothing extraordinary, which kind of matches my life. I realized that, at 48, hey, maybe I'm not that great looking anymore. But as a younger guy, I was decent looking. Okay. And then it was the same thing with intelligence. I wanted to be the smartest guy on the planet, smarter than Albert Einstein, Aristotle, or all these brilliant people. I wanted to be ridiculously intelligent, and that was available to me. I could have chosen that. My parents had the genes for that. But the guides again said, "Hey, wait a minute. If you choose that, you're going to be arrogant." And they showed all this to me in a way that it doesn't really come across in my words. How clearly they showed me all this stuff. They showed me in extreme detail very quickly that I would have been arrogant. I would have looked down on other people because they were dumb, compared to me as a super genius, and I would have become an atheist, which which was really the deal breaker for me. I knew that there was an extreme spiritual benefit to recognizing the existence of God while we live this life, and so the idea that I would be an atheist, that was just unacceptable. And so likewise, I backed my intelligence down to a smart person, but nothing extraordinary. No one that's going to you know nothing crazy smart. And and then likewise, I looked at all the other traits of this body down to the most intimate detail. I knew exactly what this body was going to be like. I even knew that this person would be circumcised, and that was something I needed to accept, because I won't say it's a hardship, but it was like it's not spiritually necessary, and it's not really the way things people were intended to be. It's just something that a human tradition now that's perpetuated. But as a spirit, it didn't seem like a big deal either. It wasn't going to be a huge negative impact on my life or anything like that. But it was something that I needed to accept. And likewise, there was lots of other little issues I had to accept in order to live this life. My spirit guides would point out various negative things about this life, and if it exceeded some sort of threshold, I would need to accept it. And another thing that was a side effect of all these choices I had made about this body was that the genes I was picking, uh, it was the genes for bad acne. As a teenager, I had really bad acne, like, the worst kid in the school kind of thing. Really bad. And the guides basically said, are you sure this is okay? And I looked at what that would be like to have this really horrible acne. And it's hard to explain how brief a couple years looks from the spiritual realm. There was a couple years I had really bad acne. And on the spiritual realm, looking at let's say 2 years of bad acne, it seemed like nothing. It seemed incredibly short. It didn't feel short at all when I was going through it, but when I was planning out this life, it seemed incredibly short. So anyway, I also saw that I would that going through that experience would help me become more compassionate, more kind. That it would be a difficult experience, but it would help me to grow to be a better person. And because of that, and because it seemed so brief, I accepted that terrible acne and agreed to that. And then these spirit guides, they had other stuff planned out for this life. One thing was that as a teenager, I was going to get in a fight and have my nose broken. And I needed to agree to that in order for it to happen in my life, and that would help me progress. But and I haven't talked about this previously, but they also showed me this previous life that I had. I had been kind of a strong guy, and I don't know when this was, a couple hundred years ago, I guess. And I had gotten into a fight with a smaller person, and I really beat him up pretty bad. And I'm talking in a previous lifetime. And my guide showed that to me, that I had mistreated this guy, I beat him up, and that somehow by me getting my nose broken, it was directly tied to this fight I had gotten into, I guess, a couple hundred years ago, and that these were directly tied together, and that by having my nose broken, I would learn from this whole experience. Like I was only going to get what I had done to somebody else, and somehow being on the the guy that gets beat up, or the guy that gets his nose broken, it's going to facilitate me learning and becoming more compassionate, and becoming a less violent person. And so I agreed to all that. But I thought it was important to make it clear that the reason I got my nose broken as a teenager was directly tied to something I had done in a previous lifetime. And then likewise, in planning out this life, I was going to dislocate my shoulder. I dislocated this shoulder when I was 19, and then I broke and dislocated this shoulder when I was about 30, 35 or something. And the guide showed me that this was planned for me. But they also showed me that this was directly tied to a previous life that I had lived, where I had deliberately hurt other people. And I'm kind of ashamed of, on one hand, I'm happy to know about these little snidbits of previous lifetimes, but on the other hand, being where I am now, like, I'm kind of ashamed of the stuff I had done. I did stuff that was wrong. Okay. And I now it's very clear that I had hurt other people that I shouldn't have hurt, and I had no business hurting them. And I was kind of like getting the consequence of my own choices from a previous life. It's like now was the time for me to get that consequence. And it wasn't done as some kind of punishment against me. It was done to facilitate my learning and development, and that by going through that, it would help me to become a more compassionate and kind person. And anyway, I agreed to those shoulder injuries because from a spiritual perspective, they didn't seem like a big deal. But then I also knew, like, spiritually, I would benefit. When we when we do something like really hurtful to another person in a lifetime, it's kind of like we create this baggage for ourselves. And there's multiple ways to get rid of this baggage, but one of the easiest and fastest way to get rid of that baggage is to basically re-experience the consequences that we had given to someone else to experience those same things for ourselves. And by going through that, we can learn, and it allows us to grow and to learn and to become to move to a higher spiritual level, which also corresponds to higher levels of happiness. So anyway, I agreed to that shoulder injury, and I agreed to other things. There's other things in my life that were directly tied to a mistake I had made in a previous lifetime, and some of it's I'm ashamed of some of the stuff I had done, stuff I would never do now, and it directly tied into some of the negative experiences I've had in this life. But anyway, I just wanted to point out that many different little or medium or big negative experiences I've lived through in this life were directly tied to mistakes I'd made in previous lives, specifically hurting other people. Like I'm experiencing what I had caused other people to experience. So anyway, the guides and I, when we were all done, we took a full look at this life, and they again asked me, are you sure now that we can see this whole life in its entirety, what kind of life it's going to be? Do you agree, to live this life? And I agreed, and I was shown some people that I would help, and I was shown that I would make some spiritual progress during this life, which I was very excited about. I was happy that I would be progressing, moving a little bit higher based on this life. And I agreed to this life, and one of the reasons I agreed to this was because I would be able to help other people. Some of the negative things I've experienced in life are related to things I've previously done in previous lives. But then some of the other negative things that I experienced in life, they're just planned out to help me grow. It's not a result of anything I had done previously. But then some of the negative things I experienced in life, they're directly tied to me helping somebody else. It's not a result of something I had done to hurt somebody else. It's not to help me grow. It's an agreement that it'll facilitate the growth in another person. Okay. So just because you're experiencing something bad in life, it doesn't necessarily mean you're just getting your bad karma. It could be because it's just there to help you grow, or it could be that you're actually helping someone else to, have the kind of experience they need to help them grow. It's all sorts of different reasons. But anyway, so I agreed to all of that. And then I got to witness my own conception. I'm not talking about the physical part of that. As a spiritual being, that wasn't even interesting at all. What was interesting was the spiritual side of the conception, and it was just a beautiful thing to see how it all worked. It had a spiritual significance to it, the creation of this new life that I was going to be living. And then another thing that I wanted to talk about was, what happens when we die, and some of the stuff I saw about that. I got to see, excuse me, multiple levels of a negative side of existence, and then multiple levels of a higher side of existence. As souls, we all have like a vibration to us, a level that we're at, and we're trying to move to higher and higher vibrations. And the highest vibrations would be, when we fully embody the characteristics of God, love, compassion, kindness, honesty, all that stuff. But if we embody negative characteristics, hatred, jealousy, anger, if those come to dominate us, it wouldn't work for a soul with those characteristics to fit into a loving, compassionate, kind place. It doesn't work. And God loves those souls, even though they're not where they need to be, where they're angry or hateful. So any soul that is like totally dominated by anger and hatred, for example, God has a way where they can very quickly um, choose to abandon that hatred. Okay, so what happens at the lowest levels for souls that are really hate, filled with hate and animosity and all that stuff, they're with other souls that are just like them. Okay, and they're all free to do what they want to do. With a murderous, hate-filled soul, they want to kill others, and so they're all together and they're all fighting each other and killing each other, and it becomes a very hellish reality. And that's the kind of existence that a hate-filled person could expect to have when they leave this life, is to be with others who are just like them, and they have absolutely no restraints. They're completely free to do what they want to do, and they're going to be hurting each other, and they're going to be completely miserable. But the flip side of that is that free will dominates, and that all of those souls will eventually get tired of that pain and that misery that they're going to be experiencing, and that they're not going to be in that state forever. I witnessed all these souls at just a horrible melee of fighting each other. But when one of the souls made the choice to stop fighting with the other souls, there was a being of light or an angel or something. They came down and they lifted you know, this hellish soul out of that melee. And when it chose to stop fighting with others, that meant it was ready to progress. And as I understand it, that soul would then come to another incarnation and have another chance at life. And by going through that pain or that misery of that hellish experience, they would they wouldn't want to repeat that same pattern. They wouldn't want to continue with that hatred and anger that they had developed in a previous life. I also saw that happy, loving souls that go to like a happy realm, that they they're happy in the afterlife and they enjoy their existence, but they also see that there's souls that are even happier than them, and that they want to continue to progress. They want to move to that happy realm. But when you're a soul in a spiritual realm, it's really hard to change. It's really hard to grow. It's really hard to move up to that next level. And so they will choose to leave that happy place that they're at, come to this difficult physical realm, so that it will allow them to grow and move to happier spiritual realms. So we go back and forth between the spiritual realm and the physical realm, and gradually we move up to higher vibrations, to happier spiritual places, closer to God, godly characteristics of love, kindness, compassion, etc. And that this cycle repeats itself over and over again, until we reach some sort of I don't know, appropriate level or point which we don't need to come back here anymore. But even when we reach that point, many souls, they choose to come back to Earth anyway because they want to help other souls. I think about some of the people throughout history who have really made a positive impact on Earth, and I think to me it seems pretty clear that a lot of these were higher level souls who had already progressed to a certain point, but they chose to come back because they wanted to help others to progress. And while I was planning my life and looking at my parents, I actually saw that my mother was one of these souls. She had progressed to where she didn't have to come back to Earth. Like she was done. She could move on to much happier realms, but she chose to come back to Earth to help others, to help make this world a better place. And if you knew her, you'd understand. She's a very loving person, one of the most loving people you'd ever meet. But anyway, so it was made very clear to me that we go back and forth between the physical realm and then the spiritual realm, and where we are in the spiritual realm is directly related to the choices we've made in life. And that when you're compassionate, kind, loving, like that all has really nice spiritual consequences. When we're hateful, violent, mean to other people, mistreating other people, that has negative spiritual consequences. And where we end up after this life is directly related to the choices we make. So hopefully people will learn, one way or another, they're going to learn, and they're going to choose to make, loving, compassionate, kind decisions, and treat people well. Um, I think that about sums up the things I thought about. I wanted to talk about.
Okay. I mean, as we go along, you might remember the things that you had, listed there. Um, but I have so many questions. I'm a little overwhelmed. Like I literally, as I have my basic question, and then I have like literally 40 sitting here. So you're gonna have to maybe just say pass, so we're not here all night. But this, I mean, I already knew that you had one of the best. Like I consider you the indie, the star of NDEs, really, like one of the best
Thank you.
experiences in life. And you added some more things that I didn't know about that. It just, I think everything that you just said, I'm gonna keep it a separate video, is enough for people to just be like, it's gonna open their minds, open their souls, and then really maybe change the way some people live their lives. Like they're really going to just start working
Yeah, I hope
on,
so.
trying to be better and enlightened and all that and just helping. And we can't lose that way. I always, tell people like, just imagine everybody doing one thing. And like if everybody, like you said in those negative spiritual realms, if everybody's just going around killing, raping, murdering,
Right,
all this stuff, it who in their right mind wants to live in that? Like who?
right. If we have complete freedom to do what we want to do, like we would in heaven, a person who wants to rape, it's just not going to work for them to be in that. It doesn't work.
Yes, yes. And so I have like I'll start to consider them downloads, but I mean I have times where I'm just sitting and like reflecting, and especially on what I've learned from people's NDEs. And I always just sat when people would say, "Oh no, there's no such thing as wrong and bad, and we all go back to God and this and that." I'm like, that sounds great. Especially if I want to go out and just start beating up people,
Right, right.
I would love that to be true. Like I'll go out right now. There's a couple of people on my list.
Oh, I understand. Yeah,
But like that, it also didn't make any sense just inside, like in my heart, brain or my, soul brain, it made no sense to me. I do not resonate
right,
with that. But as I've listened to different NDEs, everything that you said, I completely was just check, check, check. Yes, yes, yes. I completely, that's what I believe.
right.
And that's why I like your NDE as well, because I mean, I don't agree with all of the situations people have, but yours, I don't think there's one thing that I said, oh, that doesn't feel right.
Okay,
Um, but but yeah, I never could understand like, one rotten apple, spoils the bunch. Like
right.
how in the world could somebody who genuinely, it's not about making mistakes, but there are people I've talked to everybody, so I've met every type there is. There are people who love to hurt other people. There are
Right,
people who
right.
love other people to be miserable. Like really. And so that in your heaven, can you imagine that in your heaven and it still being a heaven? It's
No,
not
not at
possible.
all. But I mean, it makes perfect sense to me. That person, God's not going to force them to change, but God will put them with others who are just like them. And if you can
Yeah.
imagine a whole bunch of people who want to hurt others all together, what's that going to look like? It's not,
Purge.
not going to be good.
It was like the Purge series. I don't know if you ever
Right.
saw it, but that's
Oh,
what it
yeah.
looks like.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So let me start with the questions that I had. And